This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, a very, very difficult 24 hours for the 45th President of the USA, Donald J. Trump. If you've not been keeping abreast of it, Paul Manafort, who was for a bit Trump's campaign manager until he was sacked in August of 2016, he has been found guilty of a number of financial crimes, and they're serious. We're talking about big money that Cohen earned back in 2006, 2007, working with the Ukrainians, money not declared, allied to a very lavish lifestyle. Manafort found guilty and facing probably, under American law, the rest of his life in prison. All of this, of course, because of the Mueller investigation, which was set up to find out whether there was Russian collusion in the campaign. But the trouble with these investigations, of course, is they're set up to do one thing and they then finish up doing something else. I think we can say Paul Manafort is the modern-day Al Capone in a way. Al Capone, mobster, gangster, responsible for a lot of people being killed. I mean, bigger crimes than Paul Manafort. But when he was investigated, in the end, they got Al Capone and put him in prison, of course, for not paying his taxes. That's kind of what's happened here to Paul Manafort. I think as far as the president's concerned, and his reputation's concerned, about the worst people can say is that maybe he could have picked his friend better. But in terms of any sense of collusion with Russia, zero. Any sense the president has done anything wrong, absolutely zero. But it is not as simple as that when it comes to Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, New York lawyer, he's worked for Donald Trump for years. He's been known as a fixer for many, many years. And he's admitted that he arranged payment of hush money to porn star Stormy Daniels and a former Playboy model in order to shut them up for the 2016 presidential election. In doing so, of course, he didn't declare the nearly $280,000 in total that he'd paid them, and that is a violation because he should have declared it in election spending. But he also then said, as part of a plea bargain, remember, America has a system where if you plead guilty and give evidence, you get less of a penalty or less of a sentence. And as part of this, he has said that Donald Trump instructed him to do it. And there are some that are speculating part of that plea bargain is that he now goes to the Mueller investigation and says more things about the president. So as far as Michael Cohen is concerned, potentially it's serious if Cohen can prove the president told him to do this. And we'll look at the money and previous history in a moment. But here was Donald Trump last night responding to a very, very difficult day. He was speaking at one of his big rallies in West Virginia.
Fake news and the Russian witch hunt. We got a whole big combination. Where is the collusion? You know, they're still looking for collusion. Where is the collusion? Find some collusion. We want to find the collusion.
Well, 15 months now, we've had this investigation going on to Russian collusion. At the moment, I don't think they've produced a single shred of evidence, but there's no doubt that not only is it annoying Donald Trump that it's going on this long, but I think it is slowing up a little bit the wheels of government. Now, remarkably, Michael Cohen, who has gone for this plea bargain and is now saying it's all the president's fault, Michael Cohen has his own lawyer, Lanny Davis, and here was Lanny Davis speaking today.
Donald Trump committed a felony, a crime, by ordering or pressuring that hush money be paid so that his political election chances would not be harmed by the outbreak of these two stories right before the election.
It's a horrible system in America, isn't it? You plea bargain and suddenly, all the accusations are going on to somebody else, not you. Well, that was Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's attorney, saying it's Trump what done it. So what does it all mean? Much talk that this could lead to impeachment. It's a word that we hear used in America a lot without perhaps fully understanding it. However, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz said earlier on today this does not necessarily mean Trump will be impeached.
It is not a crime for a president to pay hush money himself to help himself get elected. It is a crime for somebody else to do it. But if the president directed him to do it and told him that he would be compensated for it, that becomes much murkier.
Well, isn't that a strange twist on the law? So actually, if Trump did say, pay the money to these women, that wouldn't be offence. But if Cohen had done, who knows? Who knows where this all ends up? I do sometimes bemoan how litigious we become in this country. We've got nothing on the level that America has got to. But the facts are, folks, two people closely allied to President Trump have received convictions within the last 24 hours. I want to know from you, do these headlines, and by the way, there are plenty of them, you know, the New York Times, pleading guilty, Cohen implicates the president. The Washington Post, convictions tighten squeeze on Trump. The Guardian, Trump's worst hour as former aides guilty of finance crimes. And top of the pops is the New York Post, Don's cons. So there's acres of coverage out there. The president, of course, will always say they engage in fake news. Let me ask you, is your perception of President Trump damaged by these headlines that we're seeing and that we're hearing today? And if you think, yep, this does actually damage the president and perhaps cause a real problem for his future, then call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think, do you know what? He's been a great president. The economy's going well. He's had all this stuff thrown at him before. None of it matters. Text to 84850. Or maybe you think, actually, whilst a crime was committed here, by the looks of it by Michael Cohen, it's of such a relatively small scale compared to an election in which about $1.6 billion was spent, that actually the media really are hamming this up in a very biased way against the president. If that's how you feel, tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course watch us on Facebook and comment there too. Ben in Bristol, is your image of Trump damaged by this?
Hi, Nigel. We're together again. Seems
Hello
like
there.
It's been a while, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, well, you know that I'm one of the few people who's been with Trump from the beginning. I've been phoning to you and to your predecessors, and I've always said, I stand alone. I live in Bristol, the liberal capital of Britain,
Yeah,
and I stand alone, with the Trump haters and the anti-Brexiters. Look, I'll tell you, this is just distraction, Nigel. The big event on the stage is what's going on in America, is you're seeing a man who's been raised up, predestined for this job, operating like a true genius, spiritually empowered by God himself, Donald J. Trump.
Really? Wow.
America,
I'm a fan, but I wouldn't go that far, Ben.
He's not perfect. He went with those women, he did those silly things, and trust me, all the people who voted for him, do they care? They don't care, Nigel. They're not interested. The liberal media, in hysteria, they care because they're losing their grip on power and they can't understand what's going on before those. They cannot understand this. This will just be, mark my words, Nigel, this will just be like all the other things, like the tape, the locker room talk and all that. They thought that would finish. They thought this, that Omarosa is all water off a duck's back, and he's going to serve the 2 terms. He's going to serve the 2 terms. He's going to thrash. You think that last election was a big victory. You wait till you see the next one go in. Don't you think that the people who voted for him are happy with what he's done? You bet.
I do, actually.
I know loads of people.
No, Ben, I do. However, there is the prospect. We've got the midterm elections coming up in November. I think all the money says, the smart money says, he'll keep the Senate and maybe increase his majority, but he could lose the House. If he loses the House, and I will explain this, listeners, later on in the programme, but if he loses the lower house, he could face impeachment, Ben, couldn't he?
He could be. They'll say that. That'll be the pattern all the way through his presidency, Nigel. It's the water off a duck's back. You'll be having these phone-ins all the way through, and every time you think they're going to bring him down, it's just not going to happen.
Well,
He's
Ben,
got too many people praying for him. He's got too much predestination for this job. You watch him. He's going to go all the way through. Does that mean he's perfect? No. What we like about him is he's a regular bloke who's done silly things in life. That's how you can see that it's higher forces at work in this bloke. It's just him.
Well, Ben, I don't know about higher forces, but I do know that he's a very, very effective business and political operator. And as you say, he's survived crises before. Ben, thank you. And Ben takes the view that Trump supporters could not give a damn about this stuff. And in the main, he's probably right. Mueller has not yet finished, Nigel. How can you defend Trump, says Harry in Sutton. Harry in Sutton, how can you attack Trump when you've got no evidence of collusion whatsoever? Mueller has nothing on Russian collusion. After 2 years, he comes up with zero. I think it's 15 months, Tony, but whatever. It's 400 and something days. It really is getting, frankly, a little bit ridiculous. I think Trump will get fair due process in the US, whether or not people are out to get him. Well, let's see. So what is impeachment? Impeachment is a means by which a complaint is put in about a president, normally by a judge, for high crimes or misdemeanors. The definition of that is somewhat unclear. That can then go to the US House of Representatives, who will debate and vote on an impeachment process. If, of course, the president was found guilty of impeachment, they would be removed from office. A simple majority in the House of Representatives then turns it to the Senate, where the Senate becomes effectively like a jury. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides. They take hearings, they vote. It would take 2/3, 67 senators, to vote to fully impeach the president. The president would then be removed. 2 presidents have been impeached, one, of course, being Bill Clinton. Neither of those succeeded in removing the president. No US president has ever been removed by an impeachment process. But if what's happened here damages Trump in the midterms and he loses control of the lower house, he may well find the last half of his presidency tied up with an impeachment process and yet more negativity. So that's the question. Does this damage your perception of Trump? Does it damage American voters' perception of Trump in the run-up to these elections taking place in November this year? You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's 7:15. So Trump's fixer, his own trusted lawyer, Michael Cohen, has now turned against him, pleaded guilty as part of a plea bargain, now saying it's Trump that made me pay the money to the former Playboy model and to Stormy Daniels, and his own lawyer now attacking Trump. And I guess that's how plea bargaining works. I hope we never in this country move towards a plea bargaining system. It is ugly and I don't like it. Trump, to his credit, did show something of a sense of humour in the midst of this crisis by putting out a tweet that said, "If anyone is looking for a good lawyer, I would strongly suggest you don't retain the services of Michael Cohen," and even CNN thought that was actually quite entertaining. How serious is Michael Cohen's crime? Well, it's a federal offence. You should report campaign expenditure and donations. If only we enforce the law in this country rather more strictly. So, yeah, and we're dealing with up to $300,000 here that should have been declared. But can I please give you a little bit of historical comparison? You see, in 2008, the Obama campaign did not file notices of 1,300 donations of over $1,000. They amounted to $1.8 million, the result of which was the campaign was fined £375,000, the biggest fine levied for such a thing. Nobody went to prison. It wasn't in the UK newspapers. LBC and other shows didn't debate it because, you see, that was President Obama. So that's okay. But when it's President Trump, it's not. Although you have to say there is the added lurid angle of a former Playboy model and Stormy Daniels. So I guess it was always going to make a story. Nobody looks at the good things he has done from America, I get on Twitter. Well, that I think is perhaps true. I really do wonder whether Ben from Bristol may well be right. And by the way, I didn't agree that there's some sort of great divine guidance for the president necessarily. But the point being that actually Trump supporters believe in him. They've seen this kind of stuff before. They just don't really care. Shiku is a new caller from Dagenham. Good evening to you.
Good evening, sir. You stole my thunder.
Oh, no, what have I done?
I still had a few more tricks up my sleeve, but you did steal my thunder about the misleading headlines. Should I say, just for a second, I am honoured to speak to you, sir, and I just want to say thank you for everything that you have done.
Well, that's kind of you, Shiku,
Yes.
very kind of you. But, so, I mean, how have you... Let me ask you, what's your view of Trump been over the last couple of years?
Look, your previous caller said this guy seemed to have been bred for the job, and it seems as though every epoch seems to kind of like breed a leader designed for the times, like Churchill, for example, or Victoria, or actually even Margaret Thatcher. I think these people are made for it, and I think that's why it looks easy, because he was designed for it. There's nothing that Trump is saying now that he didn't say 30 years ago. I think that's why it looks so simple, because he breathes these ideas and he believes in them, and I think that's why it's working, because he's convinced, everyone else around him is also convinced.
He's certainly, I mean, you're right about one thing. There are many, many of these issues that he's been talking about for at least a couple of decades. Maybe you're right, maybe it's even 3. So there has been, on many, not everything, but on many issues, a great consistency with Trump. So do you feel, Shiku, I mean, you know, you're saying he's the man for his time. Do you feel he emerges undamaged by any of this?
Of course he's going to emerge undamaged. If the Billy Bush tapes didn't do it, I can't see what else could actually.
Yeah, actually, you're right. If he could survive those tapes, he could survive almost anything. I know, I was there. It was a bit...
Alan Dershowitz actually says that what's happened here is pretty much what they call a political sort of jaywalking offense. I just don't see how... In fact, if anything would damage Trump, I think it would be sitting down with the council and giving evidence. I think what would happen is they will catch him making some sort of mistake.
Yeah, a factual error or whatever, yeah.
Exactly, and I think he shouldn't do that. I think they should take that all the way to the Supreme Court, and he would demonstrate that he can't be called in to provide evidence, especially if there's no crime or if there's no new evidence that's required from him. And I think they pretty much have everything that they need anyway.
OK, no, Shiku, listen, you are a staunch Trumpite from down there in Dagenham. First time caller of the show. Do call again. Thank you. George on Facebook says, I'm with Trump all the way. He will get re-elected. Andrew says, Trump should ditch the Republicans. The Republican Party means nothing. Trump should start his own party. Well, in the end, after those Billy Bush tapes, and I say, I know I was there in America, I was there on the day and I saw congressmen, senators running from the hills, disowning Trump as their official candidate. He almost won this election as an independent candidate. But what he's done over the last couple of years, he's tried to reunite and to reshape the Republican Party. And actually, Andrew, OK, you know, we know the John McCains and others, the Jeff Flakes can't stand him. But actually, he's done a pretty good job of uniting the Republicans. He's not moving away from that party. Of that, I am pretty sure. Alex is calling from Maidstone, another new caller. Alex, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Lovely to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.
What I wanted to say was I think this hush money will definitely be like water off a duck's back to his voters. And I am a Trump supporter. I'm a big Trump supporter.
Right.
And I think the main thing that's going to get him and that I'm worried about is him coming across as unhinged, which I think you're seeing sometimes, especially on his visit to England, when he was kind of reprimanded by the White House when he got back. And occasionally, I mean, I do have my hand almost in my mouth, worrying that he's going to kind of. I mean, I love him because he says what's on his mind, and you know, he just goes for it. But this feeling that he does come across sometimes as slightly unhinged. I think that could be more disastrous for him.
OK, so not this, but just his sort of... do you mean his demeanour, Alex?
Yeah, I suppose his demeanour. I mean, I like his demeanour, but sometimes what he says, I honestly think he just doesn't think. He just doesn't think at all. And then he'll have another press conference and he'll have to correct what he said. And I think that's happening more and more. And I think he just has to be. I think he has to be careful because he is like a bull in a china shop.
Oh yes.
And if the bull goes completely out of control,
not even the roughest handlers are going to be able to get hold of him.
OK, Alex, no, thank you very much indeed for your point of view. Are all the Trump haters squeaky clean? I don't think so. Support coming in here for Trump. Hey, Nigel, didn't you say Donald Trump was a breath of fresh air? Asked Nikki in Brighton. I can't remember. I probably did. Now, the Nobel professor on Twitter says to me, you are trying to soften the blow on Trump. No, but I am trying to explain the scale of what Michael Cohen appears to have done wrong. These two women were paid money to go away and shut up, OK? And what I'm pointing out is that amounts to nearly $300,000. What I'm pointing out is the Obama campaign did not declare $1.8 million, and you heard no debate about it. I am a Trump supporter. Yes, I am. Even I would say this is not a great day. I worry, will it have a knock-on effect on the midterm elections? I suspect that what we've heard from a couple of callers and a few texters and tweeters is right. I suspect, like all these crises, Trump just sails through, and in a few weeks' time, everyone's forgotten it. However, if he was to lose a majority in the House of Representatives, I think the Democrats in their current mood would impeach him. Frankly, they've got nothing else to do. They've got no leader, they've got no clue, they've got no views. That is what they would do. Gosh, some are saying even Hillary might run again. Goodness gracious me. Wayne is a new caller from Alberta in Canada. Wayne, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. So, is the perception of Trump damaged by all of this?
I don't know so much damage as we know, Nigel. To be honest, money cures everything in America, right?
It helps.
So, I don't think. To explain it, I have to give you my opinion.
Yep.
Since I stopped thinking of Trump as a politician and thinking of him as a businessman who wants to change things, I've softened to him. But what he's proved, I think what his term has proved, is how difficult it is to separate diplomacy from politics. You can't just ignore diplomacy. And Trump goes around like a bull in a china shop today, and I respect that. I'm a Yorkshireman, so...
Not all Yorkshiremen are like that, Wayne, but go on.
I like that he speaks his mind, but at that level, we have to have some diplomacy, and we have to be just a little cautious of pushing too hard.
But Wayne, he's a 72-year-old man. He's not going to change, is he?
No, he's not.
It just isn't. I mean, it's an old dog on new tricks. He's not going to change. Wayne, let me just ask you, and by the way, thank you for calling. Let me just ask you, and I understand what you say. If you think of him as a businessman, not a politician, I agree, people would soften to him. But do you think the net effect of this is going to damage him in the midterms or not?
My gut tells me it will.
Your gut tells you it will. OK, Wayne, I've got to move on. Thank you very much for your long-distance call. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 7:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts. A very bad day at the office for President Trump. Michael Cohen, his lawyer, seems to have turned very much against him, has pleaded guilty, accused the president. There is some legal confusion here, though, because Harvard law professor Dershowitz tells us that actually, if it was the president that instructed his own money to be given to these women, that would not be an offence under electoral law. So there is some confusion around that, but it does look like Michael Cohen is working with the authorities to try and point the finger at blame on Trump for this and who knows, perhaps what else. I made the point earlier that the sums of money involved were quite small compared to that President Obama didn't declare, and Trump tweets on this. Cohen pleaded guilty to 2 counts of campaign finance violations. He says it's not a crime. Obama had a big campaign finance violation, and that was easily settled. So there is some dispute here that's emerging in this last hour as to whether it is actually a full federal crime or not. Anybody with legal knowledge of the American system, please, 03456060973. But my question was not the narrow legal point. My question was, would the perception of 2 of his friends, colleagues for many years, receiving convictions, damage him and particularly damage the midterms? Mark is calling from Barnet. Good evening, Mark.
Oh, hello, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. So,
Good. Nigel, I've got a lot of respect for you, but I think you and all your callers so far have totally missed the point. Can I explain why?
Well, I tell you what, Mark, put us straight.
Well, I hope so. Look, the Cohen business is a bit of a red herring. You're absolutely right. I mean, Trump's not going to be damaged by allegedly paying off two porn actresses and, breaking the electoral law. That's not going to hurt his base. And even if the Democrats impeach him, it's hardly likely that he's going to be found guilty through the Senate.
No, but it would take up an awful lot of time and energy, Mark, and it would stop. Yeah. It would completely gridlock Capitol Hill, wouldn't it?
It would do, but the biggest fear for Trump, and I'm no Trump hater or lover. Some of the things he's done I think are good, and some of the things that sometimes he comes across as buffoon. I'm quite ambivalent towards the guy. But the huge issue for him is Paul Manafort, not Cohen. Can I explain why?
Go on.
Because Manafort is going to go to prison for the rest of his life on all these. Now, he pleaded guilty and he didn't offer any defence whatsoever. Now, it doesn't take Columbo to work out why he didn't offer any defence whatsoever, because in so doing, he would have implicated Trump, or the suggestion is that he would have implicated Trump. Now, that leaves Trump with a decision to make. As president, he's got the power to pardon anybody. So the talk at the moment is he going to pardon Manafort? If he does, then he's going to come in for a load of stick, because clearly pardoning him when he's implicit in what Manafort's allegedly done is going to sort of indict him in a sense. But if he doesn't pardon him, then Manafort could, as they say, sing like a canary.
Well, Manafort, Mark, where there is some credibility to that theory, of course, is that Manafort has not plea bargained. He's not done a deal with the authorities, so I do understand why that line of thought is occurring. But do you honestly think, Mark, it would be politically possible for Trump to pardon Manafort? I mean, he could do it on his last day of office, I guess, but he couldn't do it in a short term, could he?
No, and that's exactly the point.
Okay.
He didn't pardon him. And if he doesn't pardon him, remember, Mueller, I haven't followed this line by line, but I do know this. When Robert Mueller was appointed, the first person he went after was Manafort, because he knows where the bodies are buried in the Russia thing. It's the Russia thing that if he's going to be brought down, if indeed there was collusion with Russia...
But Mark,
Manafort
hang on, Mark. Look, Mueller has spent an astonishing amount of time, effort, energy and money investigating Manafort. Nothing that was presented in that court case against him suggested collusion with the Russians. In fact, the charges for which he's been convicted go back over 10 years.
Why didn't he offer a defence? You tell me.
Well, Jeremy Thorpe didn't offer a defence and he got off. I mean, hey, maybe that was a long time ago. I don't know, Mark. I don't know. I guess he thought, look, I'm in trouble. There's no good to come of it. Let's just see what happens. I don't know. Maybe he gave up, Mark. I don't know the reason. I do understand you saying maybe there's a deal with Trump. I get it. It's a credible theory. It is a credible theory. But why, Mark? If all this was to be hidden and Manafort was to do his few years in prison before he gets pardoned by the president, why at no point in that court case were any serious accusations of collusion in the 2016 presidential campaign even put up for debate?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah, I am.
Well, I don't know why. Clearly, I don't know why. But there's got to be some reason. Logically, it doesn't make sense for a man who knows he's not a fool, Manafort, and he knows he's going to prison for that amount of time. If he's not pardoned. Look, in any court case, you've been around long enough. You know this. In any court case, if you offer up a defence, other things come out of that defence. And that would have implicated in some way, I feel fairly sure, Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong, I'm no hater of Trump.
No.
I'm saying it from a political
and I get your theory, Mark, but where your theory falls down is that nowhere in this court case was there any questioning and any evidence produced of any kind to show collusion during the presidential campaign. Mark, interesting theory, and American presidents do have amazing power. Now, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, is up on the platform as we speak. She's not looking particularly thrilled to be there, I have to say, and she was asked at the start of this press conference, which is still going on, if President Trump has committed a crime.
As the president has said, we've stated many times, he did nothing wrong. There are no charges against him, and we've commented on this extensively.
Then why not report these payments?
Again, I'm not going to get into the back and forth details. I can tell you, as the president has stated on numerous occasions, he did nothing wrong. There are no charges against him in this. And just because Michael Cohen made a plea deal doesn't mean that that implicates the president on anything.
Can you stand here today and say the president has never lied to the American people? Because so many people now look back at that tape of him on Air Force One saying he knew nothing about these payments, when in fact we now know he knew everything about these payments. So has he lied?
Look, again, I think that's a ridiculous accusation. The president in this matter has done nothing wrong, and there are no charges against him. John?
The president said to Fox News in an interview with Ainsley Earhart this morning that this could not have been an illegal campaign contribution because he paid the money. He put more than $60 million of his own money into the campaign. So how do you draw the line between, I mean, maybe this didn't flow through the campaign, but how do you draw the line between what was a campaign contribution and what might have been a payment to somebody for other purposes?
Look, I'm not going to get into the back and forth of the legal part of this. I would refer you to the president's outside counsel on that. As I told Cecilia, what I can tell you is what the president has stated a number of times. He did nothing wrong. There are no charges against him. Just because Michael Cohen has made a deal doesn't mean anything with regards to the president. Stephen?
Sarah, the president tweeted this morning in frustration that Michael Cohen wrote. Perhaps you can shed a little bit more light on that, because the implication is that Michael Cohen gave up something that the president would rather stay secret. Is that what we should read into this, or is there another?
The president has expressed his views on that. I don't have anything further to add.
Can I ask one other question? Is the president now planning on or intent on pardoning Paul Manafort?
The Manafort case doesn't have anything to do with the president, doesn't have anything to do with his campaign, it doesn't have anything to do with the White House.
Interesting. So, the Manafort question being asked there, as our previous caller Mark had raised, and interestingly, quite clearly being said in that press conference that if this hush money was paid to these two women by the president out of his own pocket, then no offence has been committed, just as the Harvard law professor told us at the top of the hour. So if that's the case, why does Michael Cohen plead guilty and then say that Trump paid the money and knew what was happening when he's a lawyer himself? Confused of Leicester Square here on that particular question, I have to tell you. Let's go to Janet in Esher, a new caller to the show. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Nigel. Hi. Thanks for having me on. Just questioning you a little bit about what you've been saying about Trump's overspend and equating it with Obama.
Well, we're now beginning to learn, Janet, that maybe Trump, if it is Trump, he's committed no offence at all. But there is confusion over that. As far as Obama's concerned, it was $1.8 million of undeclared donations, yeah?
Fined by the Federal Election Commission for failing to file a series of 48-hour notices on their donations. It was not covered up, and therefore it wasn't treated as a crime. So it's totally different. I do not like the way that you actually say things which are
Why were they fined then, Janet?
They're partially true.
Why were they fined?
Genius, because you're actually misleading people.
Well, maybe.
Very cross. I also feel.
Well, maybe. Hang on, Janet. On that point, maybe the entire media.
Over the EU.
Maybe the entire media, Janet, are misleading everybody on Trump, accusing him perhaps of committing a crime when he hasn't.
You're telling us we will be better off with the WTO when we will have huge tariffs of 10% to 35%.
Yes, Janet. There's a great big world out there, Janet. You're getting very excited on a different subject. But I tell you what. The point... No, Janet, we can't have this. We are talking about Trump. I mean, I'm sometimes accused... people say, well, you debate Brexit too much on this show. This is a Brexit-free zone tonight. We're talking about perceptions. We're talking about what is legal and illegal. You make the point that Obama... his campaign was fined $375,000, but you say it wasn't an offence.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Right. Well, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? You can't win them all, can you? You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's now 7:45. Tough day for Donald Trump, and tough day for anybody to kind of work out why Michael Cohen pleaded guilty and then said it was Donald Trump's money that paid these women, when that, it's becoming clearer and clearer, would not have been an offence. Is it? It's been suggested to me in the break, now a personal vendetta. Does Michael Cohen just want to damage the president? I really, really don't know the answer to this. Let's go to Dallas in Texas and speak to Bill. Bill, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you today?
Okay, so can you work out what Michael Cohen's up to, Bill?
Well, setting aside that it's a statement he made entirely in self-interest, ahead of his sentencing, and the fact that compared to a Clinton who treated relationships fairly poorly, Trump sends them on their way with a lovely parting gift. And that, no Trump...
That's a very interesting defense of all of this, Bill, but go on.
He actually has a history of doing this, and it's very on point, because the question isn't that he paid someone after a relationship. It's whether it was reported as a campaign expense.
Yes.
And he's been doing this long before he had any intention of becoming president. So they can demonstrate that this is just, anyone who contends that this is campaign related has a long road to hoe to prove that it's not just him wanting to be discreet.
But, Bill, if that's the case, and I hear what you say, and you say there's a history of this happening before over the years, why did Cohen plead guilty? I don't get it.
Well, if you look at the list of charges against him and the time he was facing, the government can bring tremendous pressure to bear. I mean, what would prompt him to record?
So what you're saying, Bill, is he pleads guilty for something he's not guilty of in order that other things get left off. Yeah.
Absolutely, or a reduced sentence. Absolutely.
Okay, no, that does, Bill, perhaps make sense. And overall, Bill, I mean, you're there in a very much a Republican part of America. Do you see this damaging Trump in the run up to the midterms?
Not among those who already support him, not in the least. This is already baked into the cake.
Okay. Bill, thank you very much indeed for your point of view. And Bill, they're saying, hey, the one logical reason is he gets less of a sentence, other things get forgotten about, other things get dropped. I guess that is a bit of an explanation. Still looks very, very odd indeed. Colin on Facebook says, Obama wasn't on Twitter all the time when he was POTUS. Could this be Trump's downfall? Well, do you know what, Colin? A lot of people have said that this could be the end of the president, the 5:30 a.m. tweet that hasn't been fully researched and thought through. But you could also argue he would not have become president of the USA if he hadn't used Twitter. That was his means of direct communications. Last time I looked, Colin, he's got 52 million followers. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing. Robert on Facebook thinks the Democrats are desperate to introduce the president. Well, that is certainly true, Robin. And as I say, my contention that I'm putting out there tonight, if they get a majority in the House of Representatives, they will impeach the president and it'll be gridlock. Rosemary's calling from Richmond. Good evening, Rosemary.
Good evening, Nigel. We were recently on holiday, and in our hotel there was two sort of American couples, actually both from Washington, D.C., and we asked them, we said, what do you think of Donald Trump? And they both did like him, but one lady who works in the healthcare, I think she's a nurse, she said, well, I'm $70 better off per month because of his tax changes that he's done.
Yes.
And she said, to be honest, because we were talking about the negative news that's always about him, and her words were, she said, to be honest, I don't care what he does, what he says. At the end of the day, I'm $70 better off for my family, and that's what counts.
Rosemary, I think you've just relayed the argument beautifully, and it was, of course, Clinton working then with Dick Morris, his campaign manager, who came up with the slogan for one of the presidential elections, "It's the economy, stupid." And I guess that's what she was saying to you, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you're better off per month, what does it matter? I think he will get in again. I don't think people really care what's going on. It's just everything he does is always wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, when these allegations first emerged about Stormy Daniels, and I was over in Washington for a few days, and I was kind of saying to people, do you think this is true? And of course they just laughed at me. They said, of course it's true. It's almost, Rosemary, what people expect of the president. Rosemary, thank you. And, as Rosemary says, the nurse there, she's $70 a month better off, living in Washington, D.C. She couldn't care less what Trump gets up to. What does Claire from Chandler's Ford in Hampshire make of it? Hello, Claire.
Hi, Nigel. Sorry, I'm still chuckling with the lady caller. He had a couple of calls back when she started talking about Brexit. I mean, you just can't win, can you?
Well, it's called Brexit. It's called Brexit derangement syndrome, Claire. Some people are driven. I was with Andrew Adonis this morning, who, do you know, I mean, 10 years ago, I could have a proper conversation with Lord Adonis, and we could talk about transport or education.
Yeah,
and he's a really interesting, a very, very bright, interesting man. And yet on Brexit, he's just gone mad. You know, they're so upset with the result of the referendum. But so, Claire, President Trump, is he going to be damaged by all of this?
Right, well, we're on to Trump derangement syndrome now.
We are.
I mentioned Brexit.
Yeah.
Derangement syndrome. Look, I worked in the law for 15 years in the UK, and I know a bit about it, right? So the lawyer today, who didn't try and wriggle out of it in any way, but what he did was try and deflect the blame to Trump.
Yep.
At the end of the day, he is a paid advisor. He knows the law more than his clients, and his job is to say to his clients, if they suggest, in this case, paying out money, his job is to say, well, actually, no, really shouldn't be doing that. I mean, I understand that a lot of this was before Trump came into office and that kind of thing, but he's now trying to deflect the blame onto Trump, and it's so predictable. It's so predictable, and the liberal media are doing it as well because they're not interested in the facts.
No, but it was during the campaign. I mean, the argument, Claire, is not that these things didn't happen before the campaign. The argument is that the money changed hands during the campaign period. But I don't know. So, do you think that Trump just sails through as if nothing's happened?
Well, I don't think he's guilty of any misdemeanor in terms of the law, because his advisor should have advised him that wasn't the done thing. And as his advisor, he could have refused to do it.
Yes. Yep. No, fair point, Claire. Thank you very much indeed for that point. Yes, absolutely. If Michael Cohen was so worried about all of this, why did he, as a registered lawyer, accept Trump's instructions? Is a good point. And are there going to be some tapes that emerge of Trump saying, you do this? I doubt it. Somehow, I doubt it. I have to say, the more I look at this, I don't really think he's going to get badly damaged by it. Short term, there may be a bit of a dent. I read today he's going to do 40 big rallies out round the country between now and Election Day. And hey, this is the stuff he's actually very good at. There was talk of a big Democrat wave in November. I'm not seeing much evidence of it. I've got time for one last quick call. Ross, a new caller from Nottingham. Ross, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm fine. So what do you make of it all?
At the moment, first I want to make a quick correction with yourself. Is you're employing something called whataboutism, because you're talking about Obama in terms of his potential misdemeanors that he did, but he did go through the court. He did get fined for it. For example, in terms of that one, he did serve his time and things like that. So basically, at the moment, with the Michael Cohen side ones, we have to now see whether the law comes through. Example, you did say about the...
All I was doing, Ross, just quickly, all I was doing was pointing out the size and scale of the accusations here against the size and scale of accusations that were made against President Obama's 2008 campaign. I was just giving it a sense of perspective.
But that doesn't change any factor whether someone's done something right or wrong, does it?
No, but I think when it comes to campaign expenditure or non-declarations, certainly my experience of how... I mean, we're very weak in this country, Ross, on it. Very, very weak indeed. And there's one quite big case about this still going on. But Ross, there is a difference, isn't there, between a small sum of money and a very large sum of money?
Not in this case. It's basically whether are they overspending or is it the expenditure the right kind of expenditure. So, example, as I now go into the other point you're saying about Michael Cohen's going to use as against him and things like that.
Yeah.
Example, Trump's core supporters will ignore this. They'll absolutely ignore this. It's what it's going to affect is the floating voters, and that's what the problem is. That in the past, when first Trump came in, he was a breath of fresh air to everyone. And that's why I think a lot of people did vote for him, because he was a breath of fresh air. Now they're seeing everything coming up, more scandal, more things like that. For a short term, I think he'll be able to bounce off and make himself look good again. But it will always rot at the back of someone's mind.
Well, and he's had many of these, Ross. He's bounced through before. We will see. Thank you, all of you, for your opinions and calls. I'm back tomorrow evening at 7. At 10 tonight, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. So, coming up later, we'll go back to this issue of President Trump.